Welcome to another episode of Art's Place, conservative talk from a different view. We've got a great show today. We have a special guest all the way from Livonia, Michigan, former Congressman Thaddeus McCotter. You probably have seen him on Greg Gutfeld's Red Eye on Fox. And also, hey, who could forget my lovable co-host Lloyd Mendenhall? Let's bring them on.
Welcome, hello, Art. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Thaddeus, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on, Art.
All right, let's jump into the fire here. Let's talk about impeachment. We finally had the impeachment, and the president was acquitted. So all that time and wasted money. What are your thoughts about that, Congressman?
Well, Art, I think that obviously that a lot of this is designed for the 2020 elections to dirty up the president and muddy him up, and so that they can try to sneak in a candidate past him despite his overall incredible record of accomplishments in his first 4 years. But it also is to mask the abuses of power that took place and were first identified by Congressman Devin Nunes and are now colloquially known as Spygate, where the FBI, people in the Department of Justice, the CIA, and others, the surveillance of people like Carter Page. This was all to distract from that and from the potential outcome, the Horowitz IG report regarding the abuse of domestic surveillance, as well as what we're going to see out of the Durham investigation into it. So it had a twofold purpose for the Democrats, and I don't think that either one is ultimately going to be proved successful.
All right. And do you think any heads are going to roll over this? Are there going to be any investigations into those people who got this ball rolling on the investigation?
Well, I think that in dealing with the federal government, I have the greatest amount of respect for Attorney General Barr. But with everything else, we have to wait and see what happens. I think a lot of this is designed so the Democrats can hopefully run out the clock of the Trump administration, defeat him in November, and then bring in a new Attorney General and a new administration that will look the other way from these past abuses. In terms of who individually, I think it is very important that we look at this as a matter of public policy, as a matter of law breaking, and not look at individuals. The individuals will be revealed as the investigation goes forward and indictments come down. But what we have to look is at the potential abuses that are there and see if they rise to the level of criminality so that we can do this in an objective manner. Because as you know, thank God in America, everyone is innocent until proven guilty. And we saw what deceitful leaks can do to smear people, as we saw with what we've seen with President Trump. We've seen it with Devin Nunes and others, any of us supporters of the president. So let us not do unto others what they've done unto us, but let's set a better way and show the American people who is the responsible party to run the government.
Lloyd, do you have anything?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think going back to what you said about Trump, setting off his enemies. Yeah. And, I saw something the other day. I can't remember who wrote it, but they said, we didn't hire President Trump to be our friend. We hired him to do a job, and he's done that job. But unfortunately, that's really upset the Democrats because for all these years, they've been able to not do their job and do it very well of not doing their job. And they had this base, and now they've abandoned that base, and they're swinging over to the far left even further. But in this whole smear campaign on the president, I think it was is part of those lifelong government workers that have been working their way up, and they're part of they were hired and indoctrinated way back, 40, 50 years ago, and they just keep going, and that job's passed down to, the son or whatever. It's these lifelong ingrained people that are in the government that's causing all this problem now, and they've been setting it up for years, and that's my conspiracy theory. I didn't even put on my tinfoil hat today.
Well, I think that what you're hitting on, Lloyd, is the administrative state. It's been called that. The people who are unelectable, you cannot fire them. It's almost impossible to fire them. And in short,
Right.
they pretend that in a free republic where we are the sovereign citizens, they no longer consider themselves public servants, but the masters of the sovereign citizens. And so getting anything done there, and what Trump colloquial refers to as the swamp is really the unaccountable bureaucrats and the lobbyists and the whole incestuous relationships there that he's been put there by people like ourselves to disrupt and to bring government back to heel and serve for the benefit of people like us, the sovereign citizens, who it was designed to do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I think another thing why I think the Democrats are all up in arms is I think Trump is brilliant, Trump is brilliant in doing this. What he's doing is he's doing Saul Alinsky's rules for radicals. And he's turning it around back on the Democrats because for decades, the Republicans always had to like, well, we're above that. We're not going to behave like that. And Trump is different. He decided, you know what? I'm going to use their rules and throw it against them and pull them out, and we'll see how nutty they get. And once he started doing that, he started getting entrenched. Like, for example, during the debates, when he called Rubio, Little Marco, no energy jab. And it's like, I think when he did that, he was like pulling the attention away from them to him. And I think people were, wow, this guy is different. Yeah, he's not a wet noodle like the rest of these guys. And I think that's what drew people to him. And then he started doing that to the Democrats. And whenever he tweets, it's kind of like poking the bear. And the madder they get, the crazier they get. And the people are seeing that. And they're seeing what really lunatics they are. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm from Detroit, and we love hockey. They have people in hockey that may not be the strongest or the fastest skater, but they're instigators. Like
Right.
Ken Linsman was a great one for the Philadelphia Flyers. I think Brad Marchand for the Bruins today, where they just go in and just really get under your skin and make you make mistakes or draw the penalties that put you on the power play so your team can win. Trump would fill their skates nicely. He has the incredible capacity to drive his enemies to distraction, where they will commit unforced errors, or at least forced by him, and they make themselves look bad in the process. You can, rather than, I think Speaker Pelosi's obviously been one to let Donald Trump get under her skin. I think that if you want to talk institutions, you just look at CNN. I mean, President Trump has managed to upset an entire cable network station. Yeah. And he does it throughout the Democratic Party, throughout the left especially. And so I think there's a phrase, you're lucky in your enemies. Well, clearly President Trump was lucky in his enemies, and he's also lucky that he can get under their skin and make them do things that in hindsight, they probably wish they wouldn't, like impeachment.
Right.
Yeah. I think that's one. I think they could rewind the clock on that one.
No, I think you're absolutely right, Lloyd. You're absolutely right. It's odd that they didn't go for censure. They could have muddied up the president, slandered him all they wanted, put it in a censure resolution, and it wouldn't have boomeranged on them to the extent of impeachment.
I honestly thought Pelosi was smart enough to figure that one out, because I expected censure to come out of this, not the full impeachment. I just thought, why don't they just censure him? That way they can say he's not a nice guy, and they save face with their socialist, communist groupies, and he looks bad, and
it's like we said, though, he's got it under the base of the entire Democratic Party, their establishment, especially the hard left progressive wing, And so, to a certain extent, as Art was saying, we like people who will fight now, who will take our message and stand for something and stand for principle and try to make that principle a policy reality. What the Democrats, their version of this is they want people who will stand up and fight President Trump. So that if they didn't, eventually, because of that logic, it became a case of if they didn't impeach him, then they were backing down and they weren't showing the resolve and the fight and the courage that their base demanded. And in the end, it was a charge it was basically a charge up the hill, and they didn't make it. And now they're scattered in retreat, and President Trump is, unlike Meade at Gettysburg, he's trying to chase him across the river.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. You said it best. He instigates. He knows how to, well, my son, who is a police chief, he said years ago, he says, what we need is a businessman for president. We need somebody who understands the balances of trade and understanding how our nation prospers, how we make it. And it's not by taxation, but it's by, implementing better business plans and how to make the country a successful business. And we got him. But unfortunately, that goes against the socialistic ideals of the Democrats, where they own everything. And it's just like in this former Soviet Union, you had the guys at top that had everything. The people down below, they were still poor.
But with President Trump, I don't think we should sell him short. He wasn't simply a businessman that came out of a successful background and decided to run for public office. Remember, he was in New York in that media circus, which is almost unimaginable except for perhaps in Los Angeles.
Yeah,
and
right.
So he thrived and struggled, and he was very combative when he had to be. So a lot of the media skills and the political skills, just because one doesn't run for office or hold office, does not mean that one is not a political animal.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, I agree with you 100% on that. Yeah.
So
Yeah,
he was a combination of both. He was kind of a hybrid businessman, politician, brash New
Right.
Yorker with media savvy that he'd earned over many decades.
And as a businessman, he understood, because he had his share of failures. He wasn't just constantly successful. He had to backtrack 2 or 3 times and start over a little bit and go back at it and try a different approach. But he was willing to keep trying. And he's the first president we've had in my history that I've seen do something like. The only other one was Ronald Reagan, and that's another saying. I used to tell people, hey, we had so many people trying to act like president. We finally hired a professional actor to do the job right, and that was Ronald Reagan. Because I served under Jimmy Carter in the military, and that was such it was terrible. The Jimmy Carter had no clue what he was doing as a commander in chief, And
I heard that from a lot of veterans of that era. It was a very dispiriting time.
Yeah, it was rough.
Well, and what Trump is doing, I've been advocating all the way back to 2010. I've been telling Republican candidates, come on, let's be aggressive. Let's if you want to win, you got to be aggressive. You got to go on offense, because otherwise, if you don't, and you want to be, well, I'm Mr. Nice Guy, I don't play that way. Well, you're going to lose. And I knew several candidates who had information that probably could have helped them in the polls, but they didn't use it. They and I'm like, and they lost.
Well, but I think what you're saying is, and I think Trump, one of the great long-lasting legacies of Trump as a political issue, as a political matter, is the fact that he's shown Republicans that no matter what you do, the media, the heart, is not going to be your friend.
Yep.
You can try to appease them all you want, and they're just going to keep coming after you because in so many ways they are now just simply an adjunct to the Democratic Party's messaging operation.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but Ronald Reagan understood that too. Ronald Reagan, remember, he used to talk to the American people. He would bypass the media to do it. And Trump, in his own way, especially with Twitter, clearly does that. That's a manifestation of it. And you'll continue to see that. I think people are going to continue to inculcate that lesson and act upon it when their own campaigns come along. Because if they don't, you're just silly. You're just setting yourself up to be, maybe you'll get eaten last, but you're still going to get eaten by the crocodile.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Spiro Agnew, I think about him. Well, he and the press were not friends. I can remember some of the things he did. It's like, oh, they were mad at him all the time. And they went after him, and I think that's what eventually, got him thrown out.
Well, no, he also committed malfeasance too, and all.
Well, yeah, okay.
Yeah, he was thrown out. He was caught.
But even if you're like Ronald Reagan, remember, Lloyd, they called Ronald Reagan. He was dumb. He was an imbecile. He was a warmonger, and they would just run these opinion pieces, everything else. And in the final analysis, the left is the left. The large part of the media is the left. It's a pillar of the left, like academia and like government.
Yeah.
So you just have to recognize it and understand it. Instead of trying to placate them, which in the end will be self-destructive, you have to continue to take your message to the American people and bypass them every chance you possibly can get. Now, sometimes you do have to deal with them, but I would argue, as many people do, is you just deal with them in a live setting. They can't go back and edit your words. They can't go back and paraphrase what you're trying to say. And you have a direct link to the American people. But even then, that type of forum, if you're just going to get into a situation where it's designed, even in a live setting, to make you look horrible or to portray you as something you're not, then it's just not worth doing it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And especially in the communications revolution, you guys are an example of it. Lloyd, you have your own blog. Art, you're doing one now. Your own YouTube stations, guys. It's a communication revolution. You get to talk to people. Candidates should follow your example and use every technological medium at their disposal to talk directly to the voters and get away from that media filter.
Yeah, and that was the reason I'm starting my third season as the Grumpy Vlogger, and the reason I even started doing this myself was because I was listening to talk radio, I was watching the news, and I was listening to what was coming out on the internet, and I was so frustrated with nobody was talking about the things I wanted to talk about, and I thought, I got something to say. And, I've had this channel since 2009, but I didn't start until like 2017 to really get, and it really is in 2018, I started doing it on a daily and a weekly basis. But I had something I want to say. There was veterans issues I wanted to talk about. There were senior issues, and the fact that sometimes us old farts still have a few things we can teach people. And that's why I started. And you're right. I think every political person now should be doing something like this, especially especially the conservatives, because they've got a message. Because there's always the gripe that YouTube pulls down the conservative message. They take it. Well, guess what? The more of us that do it, they're going to see the trend is shifting to the right, and then they're going to start saying, let's keep a few more of those on, And it's just the power of numbers. Right now, we got the socialist Democrats that cover the airwaves in this new form of media, and that's who their advertisers are going after right now. We need to reverse that by getting every conservative to start doing something like this once a week,
Yeah, it's not so much as a boycott as it is supporting channels and individuals who share your views and put the message forward. Because one of the things I just wrote about in American Greatness, the website, is the left is going after Facebook. Because Facebook won't ban and censor political ads. They believe that they're just a platform. They're going to let you figure it out. It's up to you. And they have an ad library that lets you see who's putting the ad up and go into details if you want. And the left is screaming about Facebook and trying to force them to basically censor free speech, especially highly regulated and highly protected and prized First Amendment political speech. And so when you talk about the platforms, we also have to be very careful, not just to get support on the platform. We have to be ever vigilant to protect internet freedom from those who would curtail it and would use it to censor conservative speech or speech they dislike, because their own arguments aren't strong enough to carry the day if left unchallenged, if they're challenged.
Exactly. Right. Exactly.
And also on this channel, we've had candidates on here. We had Elena Olke, who's running for Congress in Michigan. I think she's primarying Upton, is that?
Yeah, that would make sense. Yeah, that would make sense.
Okay. Is that Fred Upton?
Yeah, that's over on the west side of the state.
Yeah.
The border of Indiana.
Now, does he have a brother or a cousin that's a comedian?
I don't know. I think his niece is Kate Upton, I think.
Well, I know, and I've met an Upton comedian, and he's from Michigan as well.
It might be.
Yeah. Anyway, and we also had Casper Stockham, who's running for Congress here in Colorado. He's running for Mike Kaufman's old seat. He's in a primary with two other Republicans, and they're trying to, take back CD6. And Casper ran for CD1 twice, and obviously lost there. So now he's in CD6, and for some weird reason, the Republicans thought, oh, let's throw a challenger or two in there. Come on, guys, let's get together. Casper's already ran, and he knows how to raise funds. And the last time I looked, he's getting more campaign donations than his opponent, Steve House. So
its primaries are always tricky because you don't want the party to have such control that good candidates feel they don't have a chance. But but it's also a shame sometimes when you have unnecessary primaries where the money is wasted instead of being used in the general election to actually win a seat. But again, I would err on the side of allowing primaries to occur as long as everybody gets back together at the end and supports who the eventual winner is.
Right.
It doesn't damage the conservative message or the Republican Party in the process.
Well, and here's the other thing, too. I mentioned Rocky Mountain gun owners. What they like to do is they like to employ what I call scorched earth campaigning, to where they damage their opponent so badly that it makes them look bad, and then in the general election they end up losing.
Well, you'll never get if you take those types of tactics, and you will never be able to get the support you need from your defeated opponent's supporters, because you need both to win, especially against them.
Mm-hmm.
But human beings have been on the planet for quite some time. Yeah. Sometimes people get carried away and they just don't listen to common sense or put the greater good ahead of their own petty animosities.
Well, and perfect example was 2016 election and the Bushes. I was never more disappointed in a group, and I was a Bush supporter all the way back to 41, and I was very very disheartened by their reaction. And I understand, Donald picked on Jeb, Mama Bush, she ran the family, and she told him, okay, we got to get this guy. And I was actually supporting Jeb until I listened to him talk, and it's like, man, that guy's just putting me to sleep, and he's not what we need for this party. Yeah. And I think they thought they had it, just like Hillary thought she had it, and then all of a sudden when Donald Trump does jump in, everything went to him. It's like Art said earlier, he used, he gouged all of them just to get the attention snapped back to him. He understood that any press is good press.
He really kind of proved that to us. But I mean, look, one of the reasons that Trump was so successful is that they didn't fight like he did. And I think that it not only, now, it with a lot of traditional Republicans, that was unsettling. A lot of them supported him still at the time, but a lot of it found it unsettling, and that led to the schism with the Never Trump movement.
Yeah.
But what you really have to look at is, as the people who were not necessarily engaged in the political process, that came out, that enjoyed what he was saying, and then went out and voted for him, that were not traditional Republican voters.
Yeah.
And especially amongst blue-collar Democrats here in Michigan, we saw that over and over. And so when you talk about people like obviously, I like George W. Bush very much. He was president when I was there. I met him, spent some time with him. He's a wonderful guy. I like him very much. And I can understand, especially if you're the Bush family, there is a certain sense that you don't want to be treated like Mr. Trump treated them. Fine. You know, I'm from Detroit. I'm treated every way anybody wants to treat me. I just got to put up and deal with it. But in the final analysis, what President Trump did was essential to him defeating Hillary Clinton by attracting new voters to his standards and holding enough traditional Republicans with him to do it. And it wasn't easy, as we know. It was an electoral college victory, not an overarching plurality of the electorate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And speaking of electoral college, our illustrious legislature decided we're going to be in a compact. We're going to do national popular vote. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think they should immediately challenge it in court and get it struck down. It's clearly a violation of the Constitution. It's exactly what the Constitution was designed to prevent, with states acting with each other to do exactly what they're trying to do. It's exactly what you're not supposed to do. And so I would go to federal court, I would get an injunction, and proceed to have it overturned as quickly as possible so it doesn't influence the 2020 election. Somebody's probably already doing that.
Yeah.
But I mean, this is exactly, if the Democrats want to regress, because I call them regressives, because they keep regressing us back to a primitive state of nature where it's basically your jungle primary writ large and affairs, is, look, man, you want Articles of Confederation? Those days are gone. We have a Constitution. We are designed to prevent states from doing exactly what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
They don't care. And I'm sure that go to court. Just get it done, get it out of here.
Yeah. Well, I believe it's a ballot initiative this year. They're putting guys on our side put it up on the ballot initiative, and most likely it'll be defeated, and will still be part of the Electoral College.
Well, you are a part of the Electoral College. I mean,
yeah,
they're
well, we'll get out of the
Constitution trying to drag you away from the Electoral College into the compact. The ballot proposal. The reason I don't like the ballot proposal is it assumes what they're doing has legality to it and has to be.
That's true.
It's unconstitutional. I don't go to a ballot proposal to overturn something that's unconstitutional. I go to court. Mm-hmm. Now, maybe they're trying to do both ways to get rid of it. Or maybe some other states that have been dragged into the compact are doing it too. But I would hope that they would, because what's going to happen is if we have a situation where the compact comes into play in the presidential election, and it comes into play in the Electoral College, then we will be in court regardless. And who knows how long that would drag on, the damage it would do to the Constitution and to the Republic and citizens dealing with each other. But they have no boundaries. They don't care.
Mm-hmm.
And the press tells them they're wonderful and they can do whatever they want, and they believe it. And then they use it and try to drive it down your throats. And so I would go to court as quickly as I possibly could and reassert that as a voter, this disenfranchises you and puts you in the same boat as somebody in California. No, thank you.
Yeah.
Constitutional, I demur.
Right.
Yeah.
Hold up. I want to do a little bit of housekeeping here. Say hello to all the people in the chat. Mike Roach Media, Steve Carpenter, Steve Mack, Mitch, old guy in the drone, Chris Hope, and
I think that's it. We've got Mike Roach. Indigo Rhino is here. All right.
Yeah. All right. So, hello, everybody. Thanks for coming. And all right. So, switch gears a little bit here. let's talk about that State of the Union. Oh, and before that, this is what I just got on eBay. This is an impeachment pin, but it doesn't work.
Yeah, I'd like to know how much those pins cost. What a waste. I hope she paid for it out of her own money.
Well, they cost Nancy Pelosi her credibility.
Yeah, they did, didn't they?
Mhm. So how about that? I thought that was the best State of the Union I've ever seen since I've been following, politics seriously. And I mean, he covered all the bases. I mean, he did this, he did that, and the economy's going great. More people are working, and acknowledging people in the gallery, giving Rush Limbaugh the Presidential Medal of Freedom. I was just like blown away by that. What are your thoughts, Thaddeus?
Well, like we discussed earlier, he came out of the media circus that was New York. He did time reality television, and he clearly knows show business. And you got a healthy dose of show business with that State of the Union speech. And I think that in some ways he's almost a victim of his own success when you think about it, because I remember the Tuskegee Airmen getting promoted to brigadier general. I remember the young lady getting the scholarship to the school of her choice. And you remember Rush Limbaugh. You can remember the reunion between the soldier and his wife. And the heartfelt moment when the son and the mother whose spouse didn't come home from war were also mentioned. But let's not overlook the accomplishments that were in the speech. The human dimension was very, very nice, but the accomplishments, Lloyd jumped right on it, and you know exactly where I'm going.
Yeah, I mean, he went through a bullet point after bullet point. Every success, the unemployment rate, is the lowest it's been in, it's below 5%. The lowest unemployment rate for blacks in 50, 70 years, or ever. Yeah. I mean, he went through and he did something for everybody. And he went through that list of accomplishments. And it wasn't a brag list. It was an actual verifiable list of stuff. And that's what he's supposed to do. He's supposed to show the state of our union and how we are doing. And he went through and he just nailed them all. And, unfortunately, some of what you say is true about he's a victim of his own press, because the biggest thing they remember now is Nancy, but so many people have brought up how much he's one of the most successful presidents we've had since Ronald Reagan,
He's been very successful. USMCA is very important here in Michigan because Canada is our largest trading partner, and this will only help increase the prosperity we already have here under the Trump economy. And so when you go through the list and you look at it, and he also laid out ambitious goals, creation of the Space Force and getting that up and running. But when you look at it, and you mentioned, Lloyd, that she tore up the speech, one of the things that was first ingrained upon you when you go to Congress is, especially if the speaker's from your own party, is you expect the speaker to be a partisan. And they're not. The Speaker of the House is the Speaker of the entire House. That's why you have a majority leader and a minority leader. You see, because the Speaker of the House is supposed to represent that whole institution and the interests of that institution, the reputation of that institution, the credibility of that institution. And you are not allowed to allow your own petulance to sully the people's house by ripping that speech apart. Mm-hmm. You're supposed to be above it. And if you want to hear the partisan rancor, then you have the majority leader, and the minority leader can give you that.
Yeah. Well, I thought what was so, I'm trying to think of the word now. Anyways, it was funny in a way because I remember her getting all over some of these other junior congressmen or representatives for saying something during last year or year before Speed of the Union. She called him on the carpet for it. That's not acceptable, And then she turns around and does something even more childish than that, other than booing or saying something bad on the House floor or whatever. She does something even more childish and despicable. So,
and it was deliberate. It was planned. She started doing things ahead of time.
Because they showed photographs. You could see that she pre-tore the speech because they had photographs from behind and that exposed what she was going to do it anyway. It wasn't a spontaneous thing. She was going to do that all along.
I think it's a fitting example of the tantrum the left has thrown since Election Day in 2016. Yep. They believe that they have no boundaries. Again, the media abets them in that perception. The media themselves has acted horribly in so much of what they've done. Mm-hmm. You've seen this with Schiff, the deceitful manner and demagogic manner in which he's tried to impeach a president. And you've seen this basically throughout the entire, especially the hard left wing of the Democratic Party, where the tantrum has not ended. And I don't see it ending even if President Trump's reelected, but that's just something we have to deal with in the United States. It's very sad. But so what she was doing, and we talked about this again, President Trump brings out the worst in his enemies. And God love her, she allowed the worst in herself to be on display for millions of Americans, in the privacy of their own homes to watch and a judge which party is actually the irresponsible one creating chaos. And it's him, not the Republicans.
I saw that when she did that. I caught the end of this. I was kind of popping back and forth between different channels and stuff. And when she did that, I thought they're going to make a meme out of that, And so I looked it up. They had a meme up there with that within less than 15 minutes. There were hundreds of them. I just did a search. I mean, as soon as I saw that, I started typing. It's like, okay, that's.
Oh, and did you notice that when Trump was going through all the good things that are happening to the country, all the Democrats, most of them, were sitting, except there was one representative who stood up and clapped, and now they're after her.
Yeah, was it that? Yeah. Was that the little blonde gal that was sitting down in front of all the women? I saw her. She was doing this a lot during it,
Was that Senator Sinema, maybe?
Yeah, I think it was. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, look, she did this before. They had somebody stand up and they dragged him down last State of the Union, I think, a couple of State of the Unions ago. Look, I remember when President Obama was there. If President Obama said something that made sense and was good for America, the Republicans would stand up. Obviously, it didn't happen very much. Yeah. But we certainly didn't sit in our chair when a girl gets a scholarship to go to the school of her choice. And gets a chance at achieving her potential. I mean, that's something you stand up and cheer for any kid. Or for anybody should stand up and cheer. So what they were doing, again, it's right now you see the Democratic Party is in an arrested state of perpetual adolescence.
Yeah.
And this is what teenagers do when they don't, or pre-adolescents do when they don't get their way. Yeah. They sit down, they give you mean faces, and they stamp their feet, and you move forward without
She did remind me of my daughters a bit. I have a daughter that acted the same way.
Yeah, but she wasn't Speaker of the House.
No. Thank God. But yeah, it was the hypocrisy of her was just, and there again, I think it showed the people what we've got going. And one of the guys in the chat said they did the whole impeachment thing because they wanted to dirty up Trump's name, which is what you said too. And unfortunately, I think it backfired.
Yep. Mm-hmm. And now he's more popular than ever. More blacks and Hispanics support him. So, and that's going to be a factor in this election too. I think you're going to see a lot more minorities going towards Trump, and that could be decisive, especially in a lot of these blue states. You're going to see a lot of blue states flipping to Trump in this
Well,
next.
we'll see. We'll see. He has to hold what he won. I mean, Michigan was the first time since 1988 we voted for a Republican for president.
Right.
So these are very tenuous
It's true.
accomplishments, but you can't say they're going to be a lock next time. And as you know, in politics, one day is a lifetime. Anything
Yep.
change overnight, you have to be very, very careful. Remember, Dewey defeats Truman as well. So predictions don't always.
I remember.
Yep.
I would just encourage any supporters of President Trump to work as hard as you can, as much as you can, between now and Election Day, and take nothing for granted. And for once, clearly the president isn't. He's going to work as hard as everybody else.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, he's got to be one of the hardest. I mean, I admire the man just because of his age, and he works that hard. It's just like he's older than I am, and I don't think I could keep up with him.
And I think he'd have a relatively comfortable retirement if he decided not to have done this.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing. He didn't have to do any of this. He was, it's not like he's doing this for the money.
Nope.
Yeah.
And he was already famous. I mean, everybody knew about Donald Trump way back when he was the Donald.
I remember walking into Trump when he was first developing New York. I remember hearing the name Trump. I remember hearing the name before he wrote his book.
Right.
He was hanging around Steinbrenner, I guess. Like
yeah, he made a name for himself a long time ago, before his divorces and all that stuff. He was already making such a name for himself, and he comes along, and so he did not do this for the fame either. So he was already famous. He had his own TV show. Even Obama didn't have that.
And I believe he owned the USFL football team. Didn't he own the New Jersey Generals?
Yeah, that didn't end so well.
No.
Yeah. Well,
I kind of blame him for the downfall of the league, but then again, it was probably already on its last leg.
You couldn't compete head to head with the NFL. You just couldn't. I mean,
think
the XFL is doing it much smarter. I watched a game, the DC Defenders versus Seattle yesterday. Watched some of that.
now, didn't he buy the XFL or invest in it?
The USFL, I know he did that.
Okay. I thought he was going to try that a little bit again, but that may have been before he became president, and so he's decided to.
Yeah, he might not have time to watch that investment.
Yeah. Yeah, he is kind of busy,
Yeah, there's a few things going.
Yeah, but like you said, the State of the Union address this year was just in setting aside all the people in the gallery. It's the accomplishments, and you were talking. I'm kind of trying to link that together, but you were talking about using this media, and what Art said about the minorities. There is a growing number of Black conservatives that have YouTube channels, and they are really hitting spot on. They're big supporters of Trump. They've got a huge following. I mean, and I follow them, and I watch what they have to say, and then I read what people, and even the comments, and there's so many minorities that are commenting in support of these Black conservatives, and that have a YouTube channel. They're using the media. That's a poll that, thank God, the press hasn't checked out, or they'd probably try to destroy that too, because there is such a big conservative movement amongst the minorities that you see on YouTube, and you don't hear about it in the news because we're not real news.
Well, I think you're absolutely right. Throughout the entire minority community in the United States, African Americans, Hispanics, people whose voices have largely either been ignored or underrepresented through the communication revolution have now, it's just such a momentous opportunity now to have their voices heard and to get their views put across, and the needs that they have, and the way that they want it, and the pursuit of happiness they hope to have in the United States put forward to their fellow citizens. So I think that it's often been overlooked because a lot of the times, especially with the left, they're so regressive and they view things like 20 years behind the times. So many times, they still think that somehow there's 3 news stations and CNN and they're the ones that matter, or the Washington Post and New York Times are all that matters if you're in those papers. That's not it. People communicate through a multiplicity of platforms every single day. It's incessant. And I think it's beautiful myself. And the left has a real hard time with free speech. Watch, that's going to be the next battleground. It's like you said, Lloyd. They don't want people having their voices heard.
Oh, yeah. That's why they have.
It's a problem for them.
That's why they have free speech zones in colleges. Safe zones. Yeah,
because what does it make them safe from? Free speech and differing ideas. Because they treat kids like adolescents rather than young adults.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I remember when Tom Tancredo, another former congressman, was invited to have a speech. I'm not sure if it was in Colorado or somewhere back east. Somebody pulled the fire alarm, and they couldn't he couldn't speak. So they were successful in squelching his speech. I mean, that's reminiscent to the brown shirts back in Germany in the 30s.
Or the commissars in the Soviet Union.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. They don't. I tell a lot of my liberal friends that the Democrats hate the Constitution because it's in the way of what they want to accomplish. They don't like the First Amendment, freedom of speech and freedom of religion. They don't like the Second Amendment because, hell, they don't want to, us newbies or boobs with guns who, hey, we might rise up against a tyrannical government. Like, that never happened before. And then they don't like the Fourth Amendment, private property. So those are the 3, and there might be another amendment that I'm not touching on. Those are the 3 pillars that give us a lot of freedoms in this country.
Well, one of the bedrocks of the left's economic policy is a violation of the 10 Commandments. They want you to covet your neighbor's goods.
Yeah.
It's the embodiment of that. I want to steal something that I'm not entitled to from somebody who earned it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now I hear somewhere in California that they want to use eminent domain to confiscate apartments because they're worried that they might raise their rents because they had an agreement with the city to where they would have a few of the units for low income, and those agreements are about to expire, and they're worried that they'll jack up the rents, and so now they want to go and confiscate those properties.
Well, this is what happens because you have the tension between the people who want new housing for homeless people. You have the radical environmentalists who don't want any housing at all. And so you see that tension. And so what happens is you have half-baked totalitarian policies like this, where we're going to try to expropriate property to make the environmentalists happy that there's no more building, to make the homeless people happy that they got a place to go. And yet the property owner and the rest of the citizenry is stuck with an oppressive tyrannical government that is obedient to the obeisance of them to the environmentalists, to the homeless, to their special interests at the expense of the Commonwealth. And that's what you're going to see continuing in California.
Mm-hmm.
Is they're going to keep trying to split the baby to keep their special interests from going at each other's throats. And it's going to have an influence on average citizens across the board. And eventually they're going to implode and the citizens are going to get had enough and throw the bums out. Mm-hmm. It'll take a long time. And I'm glad I don't live in California, but I have great empathy for the people of California, for what they're going through.
But sadly, a lot of those people are moving to Colorado and they're screwing up our state.
Yeah, a lot of them bring their bad policies with them.
And then
it's kind of funny. How did you not? You left California because it was becoming a failed state. Didn't you recognize that the policies you supported there were part of the problem? They don't want to admit their culpability in electing the people who turned California into a failed state.
Yeah. It's I think about sometimes with California that there's the movie is Escape from New York and Escape from LA. I'm really back in the what was it, 90s? Yeah. Forgot what the guy's name was.
Kurt Russell.
Kurt Russell, yeah.
The computer who
I met Kurt Russell, and I should have remembered that. But anyway,
Snake.
Yeah, Snake. That's it. Yeah, I see that happening with LA. Maybe if they built the wall there.
It's like they say. It's like when you ask a socialist or you ask a communist, communism failed. They say, well, it hasn't been tried properly.
Yeah.
So people leaving California are trying this progressiveness. If progressivism wasn't put in place in California properly, so they now got to foist it upon Colorado or anywhere else because they can't admit they were wrong. That the policies that they support, which they take to mean, see, they believe in policies, they think that makes them morally superior and smarter than you.
Yep.
Now, if I have a policy disagreement with somebody, I just have an argument about policy. It doesn't make me a better or lesser person.
Right.
They're wrong or I'm wrong, or one will get to the bottom of it. But for them, they can't admit they're wrong because that means their entire identity that is wrapped up in progressivism is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that's an existential problem for them. That's just not a political problem.
Right.
Yeah, because it's like you said, it is their identity. It's their whole basis for existence, and when you challenge that and you throw it out, they're just at a loss for what to do.
And because what they believe makes them morally superior to you, if you don't agree with them, then you're evil.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say.
How do you debate somebody like that who thinks you're evil right off the bat because you disagree with them?
Yeah.
I was in the entertainment business for 25 years. I was a stand-up comedian. And as a matter of fact, I did a lot of shows in Michigan. And I got to perform at the Comedy Castle in Royal Oak. But a lot of my comedian friends, I'm no longer friends with them because, they think I'm stupid or I'm evil because, of my political views. One of my good friends, I just got tired of him constantly making the same stupid jokes about Dick Cheney. And I finally called him out and I said, you know what? You're a hack. And, if you want to piss off a comedian, call them a hack. And boy, they ruffle up their feathers. And right after that, I was unfriended on Facebook.
Wow, how horrible for you.
Yeah, I know.
You lesson, didn't you?
My life is so much calmer. Now I have another comedian friend. He's a veterinarian. You probably have seen him on A&E when he had a show called Emergency Vets. Funny guy. He keeps putting up these things about, Trump's son hunting endangered animals in Africa and just downing him on that. And finally, I just snapped and I said, Kevin, we get it. You hate Trump, but you ought to know what conservatism or conservation is all about. You're a veterinarian. You ought to know that hunting keeps that herd going. Otherwise, they're going to go extinct. Either poachers are going to kill them off or the bad genetics are going to get in there and wipe out the herd. And then we won't have those animals. And I know he knows that. And I brought that out. And boy, a whole bunch of comedian friends of his were all beating up on me. And I'm like, heck with you guys. So I didn't unfriend him. I just unfollowed him.
Well, we got good comedians out there. People like Evan Sayet, who's very good.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's very courageous for people like him, people like Robert Davi, John Voight, Gary.
There's Brad Sign. He's a funny guy.
Yeah, and it's very difficult for them because the left likes to talk about how brave it is to attack Donald Trump, which is ridiculous. It's actually furthers your career out there.
Mm-hmm.
The lemming-like mentality of the entertainment industry these days.
Mm-hmm.
So when you break away from that and you support President Trump, those are the people whose careers actually really do suffer,
Right?
Because they get blacklisted. They do.
Well,
You've seen remarks to that extent. You've seen Eric McCormick, who I liked as an actor, but him and saying we need to know who the Trump supporters are so we don't work with them. I mean, things like that. I think he backed off of that, but you could see the virulent hatred of Donald Trump, again, making his enemies make mistakes that make them look horrible.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what is?
I think a lot of this is Hollywood still mad about the McCarthy era, and this is their payback. They've been carrying that torch for
60 years,
60 some odd years. Yeah.
But two wrongs don't make a right.
Yeah.
I agree.
I agree with you a little bit. I mean, there's no excuse for it, but then the media just gives them a pass, and they all, maybe they'll put them in it. Maybe they'll get a cameo in one of their shows. Maybe Jake Tapper will pop up in one of, on a Will and Grace episode. Who knows?
Yeah.
But in the final analysis, the people like that who believe that there was a grievous sin against them should not commit that grievous sin against other people.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I agree 100%. And well, going back to the press, we no longer teach civics and history in schools like we used to. And so that people don't understand the running of the government, how it works, that you learn in civics and or American government or whatever class you want to call it. And the same with history. We've changed history, but I've always said, and you look back in history where there's been a coup in a country, the first thing they go after is the radio, the press. They attack that because they know once they have the press, they control the message to the populace. Mm-hmm. And that's what the socialists and the social democrats have done.
The left is disarming America by not teaching history and civics, because how can you have an eternally vigilant citizenry if they don't know history and civics? And I would turn this on the head to the little regressives. How can you have an inclusive society where people don't know history and civics and can't defend themselves against government?
Yeah, exactly.
They don't want you to be able to. Mm-hmm. They want you to have the tools at your disposal to challenge their decisions and overturn them when need be. They want sheep. They don't want citizens.
Right.
Not citizens.
Mm-hmm. Which is what basically the Bolshevik revolution was all about. That's the people wanted the czars out of the way, but they want the leaders wanted to be in charge. And then all of a sudden, if you didn't agree with what they were doing or the way they did it, well, then you were a traitor to the revolution and you were eliminated too.
You're liquidated like the kulaks.
Yep.
That's right. And the way I look at it is communism. It's just, taking serfdom, just changing the name, because you still have a hierarchy. You still have the leader. Instead of a czar, you have the premier, and then you have the secretariat and the people below that. That's just another name for the nobility. And they're the ones that get all the goodies. They get the dachas, they got the nice cars, while all the lower people, they gotta wait 9 years before they could get a car.
That's kind of what the EU was doing, wasn't it? That's really what the EU was doing to Europe. They were recreating the feudal system, except you had bureaucrats as the lords of the manor. Mm-hmm. And it is probably not a historical accident that the one that left it first under Brexit were the people who had a history of chartered rights through Magna Carta on to the present day. Mm-hmm. The Brits were the first to split.
Yeah.
They have a longer history and greater sense that they are citizens, although they didn't take it as far as we did.
Yeah.
Being endowed with inalienable rights by God.
Uh-huh.
They're the closest to it on the European continent.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of why Eastern Europe was so acceptive of communism, because, well, it was familiar to them because they've been under monarchy for centuries. They would just, like the old saying, the new boss is just like the old boss.
Well, Poland especially would argue with that. The Baltic nations, but in the end, it was a Soviet occupation, and they forced communism down the throats of people.
That's right.
And thank God for Ronald Reagan, Pope John Paul II, and Margaret Thatcher, and the people and the Russian people. That system is gone.
Yep.
And in our lifetime, and I gotta leave pretty soon, but hopefully in our lifetime, or at least our kids' lifetime, they can see that Iran, the terrorist regime in Iran, and the Chinese communists will implode under their own people's aspirations for freedom, just like the Soviet Union did. There's no stronger incentive for people for positive change than the yearning to breathe free.
Yeah, I think Iran is getting closer and closer. I've been monitoring a lot of that, and the people that are starting to protest over there are getting more and more, and they've got thousands of people in prison now that they're demanding the Ayatollah step down right now and free these people, these political prisoners that have done nothing more than to question the Ayatollah. And the ones that are protesting now are wanting to go so far as to get rid of the whole mullah system, and turn it back.
They're shutting down the internet so they can kill them too.
Yeah, exactly.
And this is the regime that the Democrats think we can reason with, that things won't cheat on a nuclear treaty and doesn't have a problem if they do get one. That's crazy. That's insane.
Yeah.
And yet they were mad at President Trump for killing the terrorist Soleimani, whose entire life was an existential threat to the United States. His whole job was to plan how to kill American citizens and citizens of our allied friends. And to take him out was the right thing to do. And yet you had all these voices crying about the beloved Soleimani. Yeah, right.
Yeah. Well, I'm very familiar with Iran before the revolution, from what I did in the service, and I put all this right at the foot of Jimmy Carter. I think he did not deal well with the government that stepped in just after the Ayatollah, or not, the Shah left. There was a president there. There was a government in place, but we didn't support him because he thought wrongly that the Ayatollah Khomeini was, well, he's a man of God, so he can't be all bad. And that was Jimmy Carter's point of view on that. And that's why we didn't. And then we had the Iran hostage crisis after that. And this goes back that far. And that's how, goes back to really Jimmy Carter not supporting the government that they had voted on and put in place. It was it's really funny because it was the young college students that were rising in support of, it wasn't the old people. They liked what they had in Iran and the westernized Iran. Yeah. It was the young people that wanted something more, and they pushed and rebelled, pushed the Shah out, and brought in the Ayatollah. Now, here we are 40 some odd years later, and we're seeing that the next generation of young people that are stepping up and saying, we don't like the Ayatollahs. Let's get rid of them.
Yeah, Iran was the fastest westernizing Middle Eastern nation until the revolution.
Yeah.
And that might have been part of the complicating factors in terms of that. But in the final analysis, it goes back to Mossadegh, goes back to whoever, the regime that is there now is killing its own citizens for wanting to have their God-given rights.
Yeah.
That's not a regime you can deal with. And they have to be sanctioned while their people can then implode that regime and breathe free.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we're not talking the lie that we're arguing for martial or kinetic or military action is just that. It is a blatant, bald-faced lie. But you should support them and the Iranian people by sanctioning the government, sanctioning their officials, and making sure that they have what they need so that they can peaceably win their freedom with our support. Yeah. And not stand with the regime against them and do the same thing in communist China. Another barbarous regime that belongs in the ash can of history.
Yep.
Well, on that happy note, I am going to have to take my leave.
Yeah, I was just about to say I want to thank you for coming on to the show. And good. Are you still a lawyer out there?
Yeah, but we don't like to talk about it that much. I was a politician and a lawyer, man. That's like
Yeah,
encore.
I would never hold that against you.
Yeah, a lot of people do, Lloyd.
It's been a real pleasure to meet you and to be able to visit with you. I've thoroughly enjoyed this.
No, me too. Thanks, Lloyd. And Art, thank you. And good luck to both you guys on YouTube.
All right.
Thank you very much.
All right, man.
Bye-bye. All righty. Well, Lloyd, that was great. Another great show. That
Absolutely.
was probably the most interesting show so far on Art's Place. So,
oh yeah, this is one that
great guests like that, and I want to thank everyone in the chat for coming. God bless America, and God bless the great state of Colorado. We'll see you all next week. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.